Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Tony Gentilcore. Now, if you don't know who Tony is, you need to get out a little bit more and expand your horizons. Tony is a veteran in this industry, and he's a writer, he's a coach, he's a business owner, and I really think he's a good person if you're trying to find longevity in this industry, a good person to model. Now, he started at Cressy Performance, was there for many years and helped build that business. Then he moved and went out on his own and started from scratch, and he built up that business. And the whole time he's been writing, he's been educating, and he's really built a really cool career in the fitness world. So if you're thinking about how do I do this for the next 15, 20, 25, 30 years, Tony, I think, is a good person to model. I know you're going to get a ton out of this episode with Tony Gentilcore on the Coach Catalyst podcast. Catch you on the flip side. Tony, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast.
Trevor, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. This is awesome.
First of all, I gotta say, you invited me to your event from a couple weeks ago, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. But I've heard a lot of great things about it. Like, I had a few people who went and told me, "Oh, it's such a great event." I was like, "Oh, I was supposed to go down, but I couldn't." So hopefully next year.
We'll get you next year for sure. Yeah. I mean, it was our first event. And so with any event, you're never quite sure how it's going to happen. Like, is the tech going to work? And so we were fortunate that stressful. It was pretty much smooth sailing. We felt really good about it, and we're kind of starting to gear up for next year's. So
great. Yeah. I just want to put that out there in the universe first. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I heard great things.
Cool. All right. So first question of the day, you're at a cocktail party. Someone comes up and you're meeting them for the first time. How do you introduce yourself?
I just say, my name's Tony. I'm a personal trainer, strength coach in Boston. I like to have people lift heavy things.
Cool.
Hi.
I love it. So has that been the goal for you from an early age, or was that something that kind of evolved later in life?
Well, my initial goal growing up was to be an inaugural member of the Bash Brothers, along with Mark McGuire and Jose Canseco. So my
Great
formidable
era.
years was 80s, 90s.
Okay.
That was basically elementary, high school, college for me, where it was that era. So I'd be lying if I said that my goal wasn't to play professional baseball growing up.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to play at a high level collegiately. I was a pitcher for Mercyhurst University in Erie, Pennsylvania. When that, unfortunately, there weren't many clubs looking for a right-hander throwing 88 miles an hour. So I had to switch gears. And, I'd grown up very active and lifting weights. And so it made a lot of sense to me when I had to pivot and kind of rearrange what the heck am I going to do with my life? That component. So becoming a personal trainer / strength coach made a lot of sense to me. My degree is actually in health education.
Okay.
So I was supposed to be a health teacher, but thankfully I did not go down that route, because that would have been, I enjoyed it when I had to do it. Like, I had to do my student teaching in college. And I probably told the story a few times. I had to teach sex ed to a bunch of seventh graders. So that made me question my intentions. It's like, do I really want to go down this route? And but yeah, I was able to get as part of my degree, I had to do an internship, which landed me at a corporate fitness facility outside of Syracuse, New York, and then it just transpired from there. I worked in commercial fitness as your run of the mill vanilla personal trainer for 3 years, and then partnered up with Eric Cressy, opened up Cressy Sports Performance in 2007 along with Pete Dupuis, and was there for 8 years. And then I left and started doing my own thing. And now I'm talking to you.
Yeah, so. That's awesome. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit because
sure,
that was
a lot. Yeah,
that was a fast forward through
I've been around
a pretty
for a
cool career. Yeah, how long have you been in the industry? Have you
20 years? So this would be actually 21. So I started in 2002.
Okay,
and it's 2023. So 22 years. Yeah, or 21 years. Sorry.
Which is like really is a testament in itself, right? When you look at like personal trainers, what the burn rate is, it's like 12 months or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
I'd recommend this to any coaches or even clinicians out there that are looking to build a business around a product that they already really believe in.
As a brand new user, just being sold on the streamline of being able to put everything in a centralized location, anyone that is just fumbling with Google Sheets to Facebook messages, group messaging, text messaging.
For anybody that wants to be able to coach their clients, many times you use different tools and resources, and when you're trying to manage that, even on a Google Sheet or on regular technology, you're limited on duplicating the data over and over.
I think if I'm going to, recommend the app for anyone, it's going to be myself. If I want to take my business to the next level, so definitely looking to do that in the near future here. Everybody can really benefit from it. I use it in the rehab sphere, but I also utilize it in the training thing. You can do the same thing with nutrition, right? There's so many uses for it.
For everybody, coaches, clinicians, anyone that kind of works in the industry, chiros, PTs, trainers.
This is one simple solution that we can create to all of our users and all our clients.
So if you want to create a way to systematize your business so you can scale, I have not seen a better product for that.
And so, and I think probably a piece of it is there isn't this like clear career path, right? You're not like, it's not like an accountant where, okay, I'm going to go work for a firm and then I'm going to become a partner. And like, there's these stair steps. You've had to kind of like figure out your own way. There needs to be a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, I think, to be really successful in it. And one thing that you didn't mention at all is just like the writing, right? Like,
there's a lot to my career. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. You had, I look at my career as a certain slice of the pie is like hard work. I put in the long hours as a personal trainer. Like we work when others don't. Like we're working on the weekends, we're working at nights, we're working when most people have days off on Labor Day. Right. I did a lot of that, and hard work paid off. But also, I came up in a time when smartphones came into play, social media came into play, blogs came into play. And luckily, I also was able to get on that train without any algorithm getting in the way. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and not to mention, like I was able to cross paths with, Eric and I met online. Like we met in an internet training forum it was called Rugged Mag. It was along with T Nation. So those forums. So I don't even know if people participate in forums anymore where you get online and you actually just write out thoughts and ask questions and argue online. I know it's Twitter and Instagram, but, so I was very fortunate to, as far as when my career started, to be in an era where networking and like crossing paths with all these different people and, like Mike Robertson, Eric Cressy, John Romaniello, Dan John, Mike Boyle. I was able to cross paths with these guys pretty early in my career. Right. And then we all just kind of like, Dan and Mike are a little bit older than us. Like they're the godfathers and we're kind of middle tier. But yeah, like with writing, if I met up with my 11th grade English teacher and Mrs. Davy, and I had a conversation with her and told her that at some point in my career, in my life, I would have been a published author, like paid to write. Granted, fitness stuff. It's not. I'm not writing novels or anything. She probably would have made me her crown achievement of her career. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I had no aspirations to do any writing. It just really how it came about was like I would read certain stuff on forums, or I would go on T Nation, or I would go on Men's Health, and I would read articles on squat technique or how to get ripped or whatever, and say, I have some things to say about that, and I could probably say it in a way that was a little bit more entertaining and engaging. Right. And that's what ended up happening. Like I started writing my own stuff on my own blog that, the joke is like 3 people probably read. Right. And when the industry was ready for me, it let me know. And I was able to start writing for T Nation, and then I got spots on Men's Health, and then I started writing for bodybuilding.com. And that led to now being invited to do speaking engagements and public speaking. And, certainly that coincided with Cressy Sports Performance growing. And, and then lo and behold, I had a brand.
Right.
So I know I'm kind of glossing over a lot there that we might parse a little bit, but you're right. It's just like, I'm not a plan guy. Like, I'm not like, what do I want to be doing a year from now or 3 years from now or 5 years from now? I just kind of like gravitated to what felt right and what I was good at. And luckily it worked out.
How long do you think you wrote before anything maybe meaningful came of it?
The writing, when I talk about writing, especially, before you and I clicked record on this, we both discussed how we both have little ones. Like I have one, you have two. Kids take up a lot of time.
Yeah.
No, big secret. Like kids take up a lot of time. So before he was alive and before I got married, I kind of took the Stephen King approach to writing, and I dedicated like, listen, I'm gonna allot this window of time every single day, and I'm going to sit down and I'm gonna write something on my blog. I'm just gonna, on my own personal website, I'm gonna write. I don't know what it's gonna be. It's going to be hard. Like the writing process for me was and always has been somewhat hard. Like it's easier now than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, of course. But, that was a muscle, the writing muscle that needed progressive overload. It needed to grow and gain steam. And, I just made it a point of like, listen, if I'm going to do this and do this well, I'm going to make a point of doing it every day. And I was pretty meticulous about it. Like I was writing 4, if not 5 blogs a week on top of, anytime like T Nation wanted me to write something for them or Men's Health reached out and they said, hey, we want you to write something on this. So I would say it took a good probably 2 or 3 years before I was even like writing for free, like writing for myself, just writing for the sake of writing.
Right.
And, just trying to get better. And I mean, gosh, I can read stuff I wrote way back then and like just read it now and it's very choppy and like a lot of run-on sentences and like what the hell was I talking about? But as you practice, you gain an appreciation for storytelling, for cadence of your writing, like how to just stay more engaged. Because let's be honest, like when you're writing in the strength and conditioning field and you're writing about deadlift technique and scapular upward rotation and what's the difference between extension-based back pain and flexion-based back pain and how do you program around that? It's not very exciting stuff.
Right.
So I made it a point of like with my own personality and my own writing style, like, hey, I'm going to throw in some pop culture references. I might use some loose language and, drop an F-bomb here and there just to keep people engaged. Some people don't appreciate that, but I do. And it seemed to have resonated. And when I submitted my first article to T Nation, the first one was denied. I think maybe Eric was the only one that ever submitted like his very first article and was immediately taken. I don't know.
Right.
I know I submitted 1 or 2 and was denied. And eventually when I got in, TC Luoma, who was my editor, he wrote back saying, listen, there's good stuff here. Like I like your style. People want to learn, but they want to be entertained. Mm-hmm. And I really, really, really took that to heart. I was like, okay, that more or less gave me permission to be myself. Because like, okay, now I can put in some 90s hip hop references. I can put it like, I'm a big movie guy. I quote movies all the time. And just put in my own humor, self-deprecating humor. Like that's just how I roll. So, I don't know if I answered your question. I'm kind of rambling.
Well, so on your process, was it like, I'm going to commit 30 minutes? Was it an hour? Was it 2 hours? Was it every day? Was it 3 days a week?
I mean, I would say because at the time, my writing, I was most engaged in the mornings. So I would wait, like I wasn't like you. There's no way in hell that I was going to do any writing after coaching for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. That just wasn't going to happen. I was going to be fried. So I would basically get up in the morning, and once my girlfriend, now wife, would leave to go to work, I knew I had like a 2 to 3 hour window of silence before I had to go out and start coaching where I could actually do some writing. So I would say on average, anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a day, I was writing. And that just tells you, and that could be 500 words. It could be 1,500 words. It just depended on the topic. I mean, like I said, like the writing process for me, like I'm someone who I've never been somebody when I sit down to write a blog post or an article or whatever, I can just tap away on my keyboard and all of a sudden I have 1,000 words. I literally go word by word, sentence by sentence, over and over and over in my head to make sure that they flow together. It makes sense. I'm rereading and reorganizing at all times. That's just my process.
Right.
And when I started reading more books on the writing process, so like Stephen King writes a lot about it, Kurt Vonnegut, Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird, which is a very famous book on writing. Because I felt like, what the hell am I doing wrong as a writer that it takes me 3 hours to write 500 words? Like that's got to be awful.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the point. The point is that you actually sat down and made the time to do it, and that you accomplished something. So there's a common phrase that I like whenever I talk about writing, and particularly fitness writing. I forget the woman who I got it from. It's not my quote, it's hers, but basically it says, "I hate writing, but I love having written."
Right.
So, and that speaks to me to a T, because I mean, to sit down and like, okay, I got to hammer out this article on, squat technique or squat, whatever. Oh my God, this is awful. But then once it's done, I feel like, wow, I accomplished something. I feel pretty good about it. And then I press publish, and it's off to get criticized by Joe Schmo who never lifts weights. But
randoms on the internet. That's the best feedback.
Yeah, exactly. So, when it comes to, I do think at the end of it, like in terms of like putting like a bow on like this idea of writing, if you're going to do it, you need to be all in, and you need to make dedicated time. Now that does not have to be every single day. Like, I mean, some people just don't have the time for that. So if it's 1 day a week, it's 1 day a week. If it's twice a week, it's twice a week. But you do need to carve out time in the day and make time for it. Just like with anything. I mean, it's just either if you don't make the time for it, you're not going to do it. So,
right.
But in order to get better at something, you have to do it. So, I know it's very profound advice there, but it's just the nature of the beast.
So would you do the weekends too? Were you like, I can't miss a day kind of guy, or was it?
No, I wasn't that meticulous about it, because I'm also very much a fan of having a boundary on life-work balance, and being able to turn it off when I need to turn it off, and actually have a life outside of fitness and health. But sometimes, I mean, there's a point where on my website, I was like, I think it'd be kind of cool to have like a miscellaneous section on my website where it was stuff I wrote that wasn't fitness related. So I started writing like movie reviews and writing on my travel, and stuff like that. And that sometimes would be on the weekends. So if I went and saw a movie on a Saturday night or a Sunday, and I was inspired to do so, I would go home and write like a quick review.
Right.
So in that regard, sure, there was some stuff on the weekends, but I mean, I remember there were times early in my writing career, especially when I started writing for teenagers, and I felt a little like that pressure, because it was like when you're writing for them was kind of a big deal at the time. Yeah. And I remember there were times I'd wake up at like 3 a.m, 4 a.m, and be like, my head would start going, okay, what could I write here? And I would get up and just go to my office and start working on the article that early in the morning. So sometimes it struck really early in the morning, sometimes, but usually on the weekends, I was able to turn it off and have a life, thankfully.
So when you first started writing, was it with the intention that eventually I want to get paid to write, or was it a way for you to kind of clarify thought? What was the intention at the beginning?
I think so. I think it was, I mean, I don't know how I would divide that up percentage wise. But I think initially it was like, okay, I really wanted to just get my voice out there. It was really the main impetus of it. I really wanted, because again, at that point, social, like Instagram didn't exist, Twitter didn't exist, Facebook didn't exist. There was less competition to get your, I mean, it was hard to get yourself out there, but it was less competition once it was out there, because there wasn't many other people writing blogs. I mean, I can think I think the first blogs I was reading was either Dan John, Chris Scott Dixon, and maybe Eric's. I mean, there weren't many people who had dedicated blogs, websites on fitness. So I really just wanted to look at it as a way of like getting my name out there, and start building a brand for whatever that meant at the time. Right. And then eventually, when, after fast forward a year or 2 or 3, I was like, it'd be kind of cool. Like if I could just pay for like a little bit of my rent each month by writing an article for so-and-so, like that's kind of cool. Right. And then once that started happening, I was like, all right, now people want to invite me to come like talk about stuff in person. Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of cool. So, I think initially it was just more so like I was inspired, felt like there was some garbage information out there that I could just put my spin on. Yep. Nothing new. Like I've never felt that I've ever been anyone who was like had like a new idea. I don't think anyone ever has, but but my experience with it, my anecdotal feedback on it, and how I incorporated certain things with my clients and my athletes, that was different and that was unique. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, putting in some Terminator 2 references on top of that, like there you go, like article done. Absolutely,
and that's definitely like a piece of it. Is you have a very unique style when you write in the articles that you write, and there's this combination of pop culture, there's humor, and and you're talking about hip raised, right? Like there's just like you kind of make it really interesting. So I think that's really a testament to you and kind of bringing in the personality to that, and it's really entertaining to read. So kudos to you.
I mean, thank you. I like to think that I'm a hard person to plagiarize. Because I mean, when you're putting in like your cat's name and like your life events, it's kind of hard to plagiarize that. So, but usually people know when they're reading an article I've written because it has a little bit more of a casual feel to it. It's not. I mean, this isn't to say that people who are very research based and like are very lengthy and like in the weeds and they peel back the onion a little more that there isn't an audience for that, because there certainly is. I tend to, I think a lot of people akin my writing too is like taking more complex components or topics and just watering them down a little bit to make them a little bit more palatable and understandable. But that's just via using, my own, whether you think I'm funny or not, just humor. And then, and then like you said, like pop culture, and then just making it so people go, oh, okay, that makes more sense. Cause I mean, for instance, like talking stuff about, when you're training postpartum women and you talk about incontinence and diastasis and pretty serious topics, but I can joke about mansplaining and blah, blah, blah. And like, it just kind of like gets people to know that, hey, I'm serious, but I'm not taking it too seriously. And like, here's some good information, hopefully you'll learn. And because really nowadays the real struggle now is maintaining people's attention, because our attention spans are so minuscule now. So I don't know, like maybe Don Saladino, I heard him talk about this before, or even with verbal content on like YouTube or Instagram, like you really have to be like get to the point. Like don't be like, hey everyone, I'm so and so. You can't do that with writing either. Like you gotta here's the article, but then once you get them in, you have to keep them engaged. And I think that's where everyone's unique personality and being there, whatever is authentic to them, is important.
Right.
My favorite thing about Coach Catalyst.
One of the things I love most about Coach Catalyst.
There are lots of things I love about Coach Catalyst.
And the reason why I love Coach Catalyst is that
the accountability off the back of that.
Is simplicity.
The support is amazing.
It allows me to give so much of me to my clients.
It's the drip feeding of content.
I can schedule lessons for my clients in advance.
Game changer for freeing up time.
It gives me my time back.
It's so simple and so easy.
Hi, I'm Kane, the founder of Coach Catalyst, the #1 accountability and communication software on the market today. We help coaches just like you keep their clients accountable and scale their business beyond what they've ever been able to do before. So if that sounds like something you want, let's take a look at how we can help. So Coach Catalyst was built on the 4 C's of coaching. Those are content, communication, community, and consistency. So for content, you need to go beyond just workouts and deliver the whole experience for the client so they get the results they deserve. For communication, you need to own your communication. If you don't own the communication, communication, you don't own the client. So make sure you stop texting clients and use a centralized platform. For communities, get off of Facebook groups and take ownership over your social group with Coach Catalyst communities. And for consistency, the foundation of all results for clients, we took the best-selling book Atomic Habits and built all these fundamentals right within our app that's going to guarantee to get your clients the best results possible. If you want to start using the 4 C's with your clients, content, connection, community, and consistency, make sure you run over to Coach Catalyst and start a free trial today.
So let's kind of riff on that for a little bit. So you started kind of in the, the blogosphere of the world, where that was like the main way to get information out. And since then we've seen all of these different platforms come up, like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and everything come through, right? How has your kind of delivery evolved? You still have the blog, so you're still going there, but is it like driving people back there, or how are you thinking about it now?
I'm kind of in, it's good and it's bad. I find the current environment very tiresome and very eye-rolly and very fake. When it comes to social media. So I've kind of drawn myself away from it, to be honest, and particularly since the pandemic. Like I think I can look on my Instagram in the entirety of 2022 and 2023, like actual posts, probably maybe 20, which some people do that in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's this, and to me, like, I speak on this in a lot of the workshops I do, particularly when I have one coming up in London with my friend Luke. In this industry, if you want to build a brand and you want to build a sustainable business, it comes down to being a good coach first. Like, you have to be a people person first. Like, you actually have to have quantifiable skills as a coach, and being able to coach somebody through an actual program and write a program and like know the intricacies of anatomy and physiology and coaching people, rather than worrying about you're going to get your next, 15% off with whatever company sells chai tea on Instagram. You get endorsed by,
right.
I think people think like that for some reason is the way to build a brand and to build a business in this industry, is like likes and follows and the pressure of just constantly producing content that frankly is garbage. This isn't to say all content is garbage, but I think what is garbage content is forced content. Like, I have to post something today. I have to post something today. I have to post something today. That's garbage. I've just gotten more, maybe it's more so because of career capital. And, I've been in the industry for 20 years. I'll still post, but I'll post when I feel like it's something I actually want to say and that I feel will provide a little bit of value. Mm-hmm. Lately, like the bulk of my posts, during the pandemic, I ruptured my Achilles, and I took that upon myself to start this trend of the trainable menu, which is a term I stole from Coach Chris Chase, when he was on Mike Robertson's podcast. But when I injured my Achilles and ruptured my Achilles and had to get surgery, and I couldn't train the way I wanted to train, the bulk of my content for like 6 months up to 8 months was basically my Achilles rehab and really focusing on, hey, I'm injured, but I'm still training. I'm figuring out a way to work around this injury and still make progress. So that way, when I am back to normal training, that lag time won't be as severe. Like it'll be kickstarted because I kept training. I didn't just sit on my butt and watch Netflix for 6 months.
Right.
And lately, I'm older now. I'm 46. So I think just a couple of weeks ago, I had a low back niggle. It wasn't like a hardcore injury or anything. It was just like something it was just a really annoying, like I couldn't really pinpoint it, but again, kind of affected my training. So it's like, well, here's some stuff I'm doing instead that's still going to keep me moving and still like keep me moving toward my goal, but it's just not going to be like hardcore deadlift hour. Mm-hmm. So, I think again, there's this pressure in the industry currently to like just really focus on TikTok and Instagram and, like really being performative of gaining attention, which I get it as part of the dance. I mean, there's some people who do it very well. And don't get me wrong, there are people that I'm sure have monetized it and are doing it very well. But I do find that very fleeting. And I find we have to be very careful because who's to say that this stuff won't go away after? I mean, I don't think they're gonna go away anytime soon. But I mean, when you put it on Instagram and you put it on Twitter and you put it on TikTok, that is not your content anymore. That's their content. Like, I mean, obviously, hopefully you're saving it somewhere, but, you know, I don't know what my larger point was here. Only to say that I think what I'm trying to do currently with my online persona and my content is to just let it be known to like upcoming fitness professionals and younger fitness professionals that, hey, what's gonna separate you from the masses here is just being a good coach and like having a good product. Because if you're not getting people results, like who cares how many likes and followers we have on Instagram? Like, you know, and you can't. I find it impossible to be a very successful online coach if you're not a good in-person coach first. You know, yes, there are outliers. By all means, there are definitely outliers. But I think if you talk to John Goodman, you talk to Jordan Syatt, you talk to Brett Contreras, you talk to Molly Galbraith, all these coaches will probably say the same thing. Hey, listen, you need to be a good coach first before you are going to go off and write and dominate the online space.
So if you were starting fresh now, how do you think you would approach starting from scratch? At this, let's say you have career capital, like you've been maybe training for 5-6 years. So you feel like you're solid from a coaching standpoint, but you want to maybe start building a brand. You want to start being a little bit more public.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I'm a bit old school, and I think the ability to effectively communicate with writing is invaluable. That's never going to go away. And writing isn't just writing a blog or writing for whatever website. It is tweeting. It is writing on Instagram. It is, I mean, that is writing when you were putting stuff out there. So I think I would still lean into more of the writing side of things, because people, if you're good and you're an effective writer and you're concise and you're able to get your point across and do it in a way that's engaging, and whether or not you're maybe a good storyteller, I think that's really going to separate you from a lot of people in terms of like your ability to get your name out there, to get more exposure, and not only that, gain traction when it comes to people wanting you to write for them, or even gaining like higher end clients or athletes, or you want to train celebrities. Like that comes from being a good coach and being an effective communicator. It doesn't come from, having 1 million followers on Instagram. It really doesn't. So I would still lean into the writing side of things. But two, I mean, I'd be hypocritical if I said that you shouldn't also lean into the online space too. I mean, it is, we are in the 21st century. Like like I said, it is part of the dance. So I just don't think you should be putting all of your eggs into that basket. Like, I do think it's important to have an in-person element of your business, an online element of your business, and you need to be a little bit adaptable. Because I think the pandemic definitely proved that to us, where, because if that happens again, God forbid if it does, like you need to have stuff in place to be able to pivot back to online and then go back to in person. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have, just eggs in several baskets, or whatever the appropriate phrase is there, because, if you're just solely on one or the other, I feel like you're leaving a lot to the wayside.
As a coach that runs challenges, I needed my life back. I had stuff all over the place. A Facebook group for community interaction, Google Sheets for check-ins and measurements, and was drowning in email communication. As my challenges grew past just a handful of people, I started to notice clients were falling through the cracks. I began researching virtual assistants because I just couldn't manage it all. And truthfully, the client experience was going down the drain. Luckily, a friend recommended Coach Catalyst and just told me to trust her. I'm sure glad I did. Now I can run my challenges with 2 or 200 clients with just a few clicks. The lessons get delivered on the right days, the accountability happens automatically, and most importantly, the communication is all in one spot. I even created 2 new challenges from the Coach Catalyst library. Best part, didn't have to change a thing. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to log into all the apps I needed. Now I log in and my dashboard tells me who needs a shout out and who needs a kick in the butt in about 15 seconds. I feel like a huge weight is lifted off of my shoulders. I can finally spend my time coaching again instead of worrying about all the admin work. Do your brain a favor and get Coach Catalyst.
Well, online is just so more accessible now than maybe it was 10, 15 years ago, right? With different softwares and with people being comfortable on the internet, and the pandemic really accelerated maybe a lot of trends that were starting to happen, but people are now very comfortable jumping on Zoom or jumping on meetings or even doing some virtual training. And so the market is a little bit more ready probably for it than anyone else. But staying with the writing theme, if someone was ready to get started, obviously practice is a huge piece of it. It's just like, I think the committing to so many hours or so many minutes a day is an invaluable thing to do, because it just develops that consistency, which is what it takes to get better. But how about any like books that have maybe really helped you, or any articles that have really helped you, especially early on?
My bookshelf, I used to be a more avid reader than I am now, because like I got kids, man.
Right.
See, I just want to go to sleep. I don't really want to I don't want to read. I just want to get some sleep. Right. But I do have a bookshelf part, and I have a section of my bookshelf that's solely on books on writing.
Okay.
You know, they're not like deep ones on like proper grammar and how to like become an uppity writer. It's more so the process of writing. I think I mentioned one, Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird. I think is a fantastic one. Stephen King's On Writing is also a classic read. Kurt Vonnegut, although he passed away several years ago, his editor released a book. I bought it, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. And it was all Kurt Vonnegut pontificating on the writing process. And that guy, like, for me, he's the gold standard. Like, to read him discuss like the writing process and storytelling and like being more concise with your words. And it's really, really good stuff. The name of the book eludes me at the moment, but that's a great one. And then there's another book called, I think the author is Anne Hanley, and it was called Everybody Writes. It was just revised, actually. I think, and I almost bought it, but I didn't. And that was an excellent book. What the main message of that book that I remember gleaning from is that, being a writer isn't just writing novels. It is writing blogs. It is writing social media. There's a way, there's a reason why people who have a big following on social media, speaking of that, have a large following. Yeah. Maybe they're very attractive, of course, or maybe they're very good. They just have a very good personality online. Like I hate being on camera. But the ones that write very well and are very engaging writers, like look at John Romaniello. That guy is a fantastic writer and very engaging writer. And is somebody who I would encourage anyone, if they're interested in that component of the industry, to follow.
Yeah, I think that's great. So how has your writing changed now, since like you don't have as much time, right?
I don't do it as much as I used to. I keep telling myself I really wish to get back to writing. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't be able to do it 5 days a week, but certainly like Thursdays, like today, for example, is basically a Saturday for me. Like I don't train clients on Thursdays or Fridays, but Friday is more of an admin day. Like I'm doing online programs. I'm doing, catching up on programs for my in-person clients. But Thursday is kind of like the free day, so to speak.
Okay.
So I certainly would like to, I've actually restarted a list of like topics that I want to write on. Because honestly, I get a lot of ideas from my clients that when I'm coaching them in person, like they'll say something or do something that I'm like, that'd probably be a good article. I could, and I'm starting to remake that list, or kind of like rekindle that list. So at some point I'm going to get to it. I think after I got a big trip coming up, and of course, then the holidays are here. So it might be my New Year's resolution for 2024 to start doing a little bit more writing on my website. But even if it's just 1 day a week, you figure that's going to be 52 posts a year, which is more than what most people do.
Right. So, and your body of work, how many articles do you know how many articles you have on your website?
I think on my blog post, I was in my dashboard the other day on WordPress. I have over 2,500 articles on our blog posts on my website. And that's not counting the articles I've written for teenage and men's health, et cetera. So there's a lot.
And have you found with that body of work, like you put in a lot of effort building this body of work, is that continue to pay dividends now via Google searches and other things and bringing you new readers?
I've had a few people mention that what I could do if I again, it comes down to time, is go through all those blog posts and basically like cherry pick the really good ones and make them into a book, a la Dan John. I mean, I think all Dan John's early like books, like Never Let Go, et cetera, were all old blog posts or articles that he had written that he just put into a book, which, I mean, if it's already written, I mean, it certainly has to be jazzed up a little bit and modified in terms of like, you know, if I don't think any pop culture references from 2007 are going to hit today.
Right.
So, but something I've had a few people mention that, which like raised my eyebrow. And with that body of work, like all the time I had people randomly messaging me out of nowhere, be like, I picked up a client actually several weeks ago on hypermobility because she was trying to find like, how do I train around this issue? And I had written a few articles on my website several years ago when I was at Cressy Performance about hypermobility and like what is it and how do you modify a training program for somebody with that issue? And she read them and reached out to me, and then now she's an in-person client of mine. So yeah, it's still paying off dividends for sure.
Right. That's awesome. So at the beginning, I kind of asked you how you would introduce yourself at a cocktail party, but you still, I mean, even though you're a pretty prolific writer and you've done a lot of that, do you still kind of consider yourself like a coach, strength coach, personal trainer first?
I consider myself a coach first before I'm a writer. I would never tell somebody I'm a writer.
Okay.
You know, even like when I talk to my accountant or, you know, my financial advisor or whatever, it's just like, I'm a strength coach. I'm a personal trainer. I don't say I'm a writer. Yeah. And I'm all uppity. But, you know, I'm just a dude that likes those heavy things that can, you know, sometimes put two coherent sentences together.
Right. That's awesome.
You know, so yeah.
Cool. Well, let's kind of dig into the business and kind of your evolution a little bit through it. So was it just like you and Eric Cressy just badgering each other in a random forum, and then this turned into like, hey, like, well, let's just go start a gym together?
Kinda. Well, we had crossed paths on the internet many, many times. And at the time I was in Syracuse, he got a job at a gym in Connecticut. And then he mentioned where he was hired, they were looking for another trainer.
Okay.
And I kind of made note that I was like, you know, I'm kind of going nowhere in central New York. It's like dark and gloomy here all the time. I'm making zero money. It's awful. So he kind of knew I was itching to get out of there.
Yep.
So I went out, interviewed. We ended up being roommates for 2 years, 1 year in Connecticut, 1 year in Boston. So we lived together for 2 years, and then eventually, we was like, you know what, let's open up a gym with Pete. And that's exactly what happened. So
how did Pete come into the picture?
Well, Pete and Eric were roommates, freshman year in college.
Got it.
And then Pete, went on to Babson, which is a very well-known business school. And he was obviously, in Boston still, and he would come and work out with Eric and I once or twice a week at the gym that we were at. And Eric, Eric was kind of like gauging Pete's interest. I'm like, because Pete was kind of in an office job and kind of hating life too. And, you know, Pete and Eric had mentioned like, what if we open up a gym? And I kind of piqued Pete's interest, and, you know, he was in too. So, that was great, because then Pete, his role in the initial stages of Cressy Sports Performance was the business component. Like he was responsible for answering the phone and getting the utilities all set up and managing client roles and you know, emails and information, and Eric and I could coach. But Eric, of course, was doing a lot of business stuff too. I mean, he's a machine and never turns it off. And you know, but my role in the early stages of CSP was really just to be a coach. Like I would label myself as probably the least businessman of the three of us, if not like the entire industry. But what was nice about being with them for 8 years and being a business partner was obviously I was around them all the time, and we were all best friends, and we were all best friends, and you know, I was able to listen to those guys talk a lot on the business side of things. And Pete is like the man. Like he is like, if not the go-to guy, the top one or like 2 or 3 in the industry where, you know, for consultations and gym ownership. And, you know, he just knows, I mean, he knows like numbers and everything. I'm just like, I don't know how he does it, but my role was just to be a coach, which was very helpful. But listening to them for 8 years, like when I eventually did turn the page and end up leaving there, and start my own little spot here in Brookline, Boston, I wasn't as abysmal as I thought as a business person, because a lot of it is intuition. It's like, you know, don't spend more money than you have, and you know, prepare for retirement, and like, you know, it's start small, then grow big. You know, and my model is a bit different than most, because I actually sublet my space when I'm not using it. So, you know, I get every month I get my overhead covered and then some. So it's actually subletting is actually a revenue stream for me. And are
you subletting to another coach or to like a massage therapist or
several?
Okay.
So right now my space is tiny. So I have a 500 square foot spot here in Boston. And I sublet to 2 other coaches. Sometimes it's 3. So when I'm not using it, there's somebody else using the space and running their own show, their own prices, their own schedule, their own clients. And it's worked really well for me for 8 years. And I've been outgrowing that space for probably the past 4 years. And this coming spring, we're expanding to a 5,500 square foot facility where 2/3 of it is going to be gym space with many more racks and many more coaches, hopefully, fingers crossed. And then the other half, my wife is going to be running. She's going to be bringing her private practice over for psychotherapy, but also we're going to have dedicated office space for physical therapy, massage, and hopefully nutrition. Cool. So it's going to be a collective. It's going to be called Core Collective. So there's going to be like a lot of cross pollination of clients. So like if I have somebody who gets injured, I can just send them to the other. Okay, PT's over there, and then they can send people my way. And so I'm excited for it. I've invested in a lot of paper bags to hyperventilate into as well, because obviously with a larger space, there's more overhead, more risk. But I think I just found that in the industry there was a niche that I could address, where there's a lot of commercial personal trainers out there working at commercial gyms who are kind of sick of being in that setting, you know, but they don't have the means to start their own place. So I could be that intermediary where it's like, okay, you want to grow your business and brand in a way that with integrity. Like my MO is not to nickel and dime you and get as much money from you as I can. I mean, your only responsibility is going to be to pay your rent, have liability insurance, and then be in line with my core values and expectations. Like you don't have to be like a mirror image of like how I train people, but I also don't want you to be a complete 180 of what I do too. So what's nice about running my own show is like, I don't want to have an employee or manage people, but the coaches that I do align with, we have very close philosophical approaches to coaching and how we like to coach people. So there's got to be some sort of
with your gym setup too, you're going to attract a certain type of individual, right? If there's a bunch of racks and barbells and deadlift stations, you're probably not having a lot of Zumba instructors coming in wanting to run a show.
My tagline is because heavy things don't lift themselves. So I mean, it's, you know, with my writing and the way people know me, there's going to be deadlifts and squats. Like we're going to lift some heavy things. Like I'm not building power lifters or anything like that. But I mean, I do predominantly work with Gen Pop now, but they still get after it. Like they're all lifting heavy things off the floor. They're pushing stuff. They're throwing stuff all over the place. They love it. And but certainly when you walk into my current studio and the one that I'm making, it's going to be very minimal equipment. I think we're going to have a Versa climber and one or two Airdyne bikes. Yeah. And then the rest of it's going to be racks, barbells, and plates. Yeah. So, so people are going to know what they're getting themselves into when they walk into that space for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. For a guy that doesn't maybe label himself as very business orientated, that's the pretty big business project you're taking on, and maybe not giving yourself as much credit.
I give a lot
of
credit to my wife too. Like she's very business savvy. And I mean, I got to be honest, like the model has worked for 8 years. Like I've done very well with the model. Now it's just scalability. And just trying to scale it to where it becomes a bigger revenue stream for me. And, then I can kind of wean myself away from all the coaching that I do. Yeah. And I have a lot of smart people in the industry that I know. One of the perks of being in the industry for so long is I know a lot of people. So I can reach out to Pete Dupuis and Mark Fisher and, you know, all these people that have a lot of like way more business savvy than I do and ask their opinions on things. Right. So, Joe Dowdell, I don't know if you remember that name, but he basically ran the model in New York City that I'm going to be doing. The only thing that's going to be different about mine is the psychotherapy component, which is my wife. So, it's lovely that I get to reach out to those guys and just shoot them a quick text. Say, hey, what do you think about this? They can be like, that's stupid. Oh, okay, thanks. Like,
won't make that mistake. Got it.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I mean, what does your business model look right now? Because you spent probably really the first, when you were at Cressy, that's really like honing your your coaching chops, like putting your reps in, doing all of that. Yep. And so how has your kind of coaching model evolved since you've kind of left Cressy?
I left there, I don't work with as many athletes for sure, at least high level athletes. I have a handful of high school kids and college kids that I work with. But like I said, the 90% of my clients now are Gen Pop. But I mean, honestly, like I get asked this question a lot. It's like, well, what's the difference between training an athlete and a normal person? And I was like, really not much. Like, I mean, my clients are still deadlifting and squatting and doing chin-ups and throwing med balls and doing farmer carries. It's just not, the intensity is lower and the speed's not as fast. So, and a plyometric for them is like skipping rather than doing bounding and jumping and broad jumps. So, so the coaching hasn't changed. I mean, the amount of coaching I'm doing has changed in terms of total hours. Like, I do a semi-private. It's probably one element I didn't mention was I don't do one-on-one training. I do all semi-private. So I'm working with anywhere from 2 to 4 people at the same time. But they're all working off of their own schedule. And that is a model that I basically took from Cressy Sports Performance and just took it into the Gen Pop realm. And it's worked very well. Like I'm a big proponent of that model for most people because it just allows you to scale your business and to make more money with less hours. Right.
Yeah. It's really a density of time.
Sure.
And so with that, so you're still coaching people in person because you've done so much writing, which has allowed you to kind of create a name for yourself in the industry. Is that what kind of brought on maybe some online clients and doing some of that stuff?
Well, man, I remember training. I remember when Eric and I were first roommates together in Connecticut, we both started doing online training at a time where like, what the fuck is this? Like, like I remember I had an in-person, I had a client of mine that I worked with in Syracuse because I moved to Connecticut and he reached out to me. He's like, hey, is there a way that you could still train me? And I was like, what are you talking about? And what we did, the system that we came up with was like, okay, you send me a check in the mail. I'll receive that check and I'll send you like a Word document of your program. It was crazy. It worked, but it was just to do that now would be insane. Right. But I still do online training, but I found that if anything more than like 10 or 12 online clients, and it's too much for me because because I still do a fair amount of in-person coaching. Like I'm still coaching in-person clients 22 to 25 hours a week, which isn't a crazy amount, but and I think currently I have 10 distance coaching clients that I work with from across the country and the globe. I just picked up a client from Saudi Arabia, and I update their weekly programs every Friday. And then other revenue streams is like also writing, of course, although that's less of a thing than it used to be. And then digital products that I have out there, so complete shoulder hip blueprint, strategic strength. And then just doing speaking engagements. So I got 2 workshops coming up in Europe in the fall that I'm looking forward to. So those allow me to do kind of like subsidized travel, which is nice.
Absolutely.
I get to travel the world, but then get to go talk about, okay, let's deadlift. And it's pretty cool. Like it really kind of dumbfounds me at times that I get paid to do that. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I think, but still the bulk, I would say 75 to 80% of my total income is still from in-person coaching.
Okay.
So the goal of this expansion of the gym is to probably still keep it that, but just less hours of coaching.
Yeah.
Because I really want to see about what I can do to make the gym itself, the collective itself, a revenue stream. And then I don't know, I mean, maybe have 2 in the city. And then, because I do think there's a need where coaches want a place to train their clients, where they can set their own rules, their own rates, their own schedule. And then have not as much risk.
Right.
So I'm the one taking the risk because I'm the one that signs the 10-year lease and buys all the equipment and buys all the flooring, does the build out.
Yeah.
And so now your only risk is like, okay, you have to pay your rent. But you're going to be along your like-minded coaches. Like I really envision a scenario where, we're sharing ideas with clients and having in-services and, really helping each other grow and expand together and helping each other out. I'm really infatuated with that idea. And that's one thing, frankly, I miss from when I was at Cressy Performance, just being on the floor with other coaches. Right. I think that was one of the best things for me as far as like bouncing ideas off each other and like, seeing how someone else coaches an exercise, coming up with new exercises. I really miss that. And that's really what I envision for the new space is more of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to be respectful of your time because I know you got a young guy to pick up here in a little bit. So let's finish up.
Get him at school,
right? And we don't want you to be late. So let's finish with just a few like rapid fire here type questions.
Sure.
So taco, burrito, or quesadilla?
Taco.
Nice.
100%.
If you could live in any cartoon world for a week, what cartoon world do you live in?
He-Man, Masters of the Universe.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Nice.
Just because, like, what is any world at, man? There's just like they just made up characters out of nowhere, like Moss Man. What the fuck was that?
I love it. All right, if you were reincarnated as an animal based upon your personality, what animal do you come back as?
I would say a cat, just because I am introverted.
Okay.
I'm through and through an introvert. So after, I come across as very extroverted and animated, which, I can turn it on when I have to, when I'm coaching, but when I'm done coaching, the last thing I want to do is talk to people. I just want to read a book, watch a movie, not talk, so a cat for sure.
Oh, I love it. Nice. All right. Last one. If you could have dinner with one person, past or present, who do you want to hang out and have a conversation with?
Well, I kind of mentioned him earlier, but Kurt Vonnegut would be a big one, I think.
Okay.
Or Nolan Ryan.
Okay. Yeah, another good one.
Just because my baseball background, just to talk to him, talk a little baseball with him would be kind of cool.
A legend. Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on. And if people want to find out more about what you've got going on, where in the world or where in the web do you live?
My website is TonyGentilcore.com, and that's home base. So that's social media, blog, products, speaking engagements. Everything's right there.
Cool, man. I wish I had another hour, but maybe we'll have to do it again.
We could talk more. I know we could do it.
I think we'll have to do a part 2, man. I think we'll do a part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
All right, brother. I appreciate you for coming on.
I appreciate it, Trevor. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.